Hey class, welcome to your online lecture on nutrition, more specifically macronutrients. We'll take some time to explain what macronutrients are, what they do for our body in this short presentation here today. Maybe this is new to you, something you haven't done before. If you've taken an online class before, you're probably familiar with online lectures and how they work. Basically, here in a moment, I will go from here to like the corner of your screen, and as I go through a PowerPoint presentation, I just kind of guide you along here. Okay, point out some of the important facts as you reference the actual PowerPoint slide. Okay, so again, hopefully this works for you, this arrangement. I apologize we didn't get to this in class. But maybe this was for the best in terms of saving some time and getting in activities that we really need to get in. So we will go to the corner of the screen now. I'll bring up our presentation. Again, kind of gave you an intro via that video that you watched in class. I think that was a good intro, got you thinking a little bit. It's impossible to cover everything nutrition based in a day or even two, or there's a lot of information out there. We're just going to touch on macronutrients here today. If you're into nutrition, I really urge you, we're at the time in which we're signing up for classes here at MCC, there is a whole class devoted to nutrition. It's a class that I teach here on campus, and it's online. So if that's something that interests you, then please enroll in that class if you'd like. There's still room as of right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at our first slide. We'll talk about why nutrition is so important. Obviously, there's impacts on our health. If you don't eat right, bad things can happen to you. In the video that we watched in class, Joel Furman was explaining that a lot of the health issues that we run into are because we're not putting the right fuel in our body. If we were to eat right, phytochemicals and antioxidants, things that we're supposed to put in our body, then we can stop cancer in its tracks. We can prevent heart disease, things like that. So obviously it plays a big role on our health, whether we're healthy or unhealthy. It has a big influence. Nutrition obviously has a lot to do with our appearance. If we overconsume, we tend to pay for that. Okay, so that's part of it, obviously. Behavior, you probably noticed that if you don't get the fuel that you need, the food and that you need, your mood and behavior can be altered. Okay, you get grumpy, irritable, maybe sleepy if you don't get the proper nutrition body desires. Okay, the role of nutrients. Nutrients help your body obviously to grow and develop. Okay. Nutrients provide our body with the energy that we need. So when you consume calories, those calories are in essence just energy to move you and help you do the things that you need to do. Okay, nutrients can help regulate metabolism, especially some of the micronutrients. And speaking of micronutrients, we'll look over here at the list of nutrients. There are 6 different nutrients. Half are going to be macronutrients. So macro means large, and then the other half, the ones here at the bottom, are going to be micronutrients. The big difference here is that your macros, your carbs, your fats, and your proteins, all of these provide your body with energy. And the micronutrients here at the bottom, vitamins, minerals, and water, they don't give you any energy. Okay, they just kind of support body function. That's what those micronutrients do for us. So our focus again today We'll be on those macros, the ones that give our body the energy we need to move about and do our thing. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and look at our first macronutrient, and that is carbohydrates. So carbs play a big role in providing our body with energy, basically, and there's different diets out there. If you're on like the Atkins diet or something, you will disagree with me here, but your body runs primarily on carbohydrates, especially when it comes to like brain function. Carbs play a huge role. So we're going to give you like a breakdown later on in the presentation. What percentage of your diet should be carbs and fats and proteins. But for right now, let's just say that a large portion of your diet should be carb. All right. There are simple carbohydrates and there's complex carbs. Simple carbs would be well, let's start here. Carbs are, in essence, just sugar. You've seen like the diagram in textbooks before, like the process of photosynthesis. Basically, a lot of carbs come from plant sugars, glucose, and vegetation that we consume. Typically, glucose. Process of photosynthesis. When we eat carbs, we are eating sugars, some natural sugars, some unnatural sugars. Simple sugars are just that, very simple. It's easy to kind of break down those sugars. We're talking about soda, candy, sweets, and fruit. Those sugars can be processed very quickly. So it sounds like a good thing, but a lot of times you run into issues with the blood sugar. So if we consume simple sugars that are tapped into very quickly and they're processed quickly, that's going to cause a spike in the blood sugar, okay, which could be a bad thing for us. Oops. Okay. Oftentimes, soda, candy, sweets can promote that fat deposit can contribute to fat deposits on your body. So you got to be careful with those simple sugars. As a nutritionist, I would recommend strongly that you consider consuming more complex carbs, things like pasta, rice, breads, potatoes. With the complex carbs, you're going to have longer chains of glucose molecules, so it's not just one single molecule, it's going to be several grouped together, and it's going to be more difficult to break those down. It's not going to cause those sharp spikes in blood sugar, and will kind of keep things consistent. All right. Those complex carbs contribute both nutrients and fiber to your diet. Okay, when it comes to fiber, we have soluble fiber and we have insoluble fiber. So when we think of fiber, we're thinking of carbs. With soluble fiber, it decreases your cholesterol level, so it's a good thing. It's found in oat bran, lots of fruits and veggies. Okay, and then with insoluble fiber, that's going to reduce the risk of colon cancer. So we're talking about maybe you have some bread that has like the oats and the nuts and everything built in, and that'll be a good thing as well. So also like wheat bran, grains, whole grains would be insoluble. It's important to have that so everything can move through your system properly. Okay, a lot of people, when it comes to consuming the right amount of fruits and vegetables, they don't get enough. Less than 20% of Americans consume the fruits and the vegetables that they're supposed to. So we encourage you 5 fruits and veggies per day on a regular basis. Okay, when it comes to some guidelines for carbohydrates, want to make sure that you consume the quality carbs, not the simple sugars, but those complex carbs as often as you can. Try to add variety. Don't eat the same things all the time. When we're talking about carbohydrates, we talk about, a lot of people just think of like the bread, but it's, fruits and veggies are definitely considered carbohydrates as well, and they're important. Okay, so like the video, we want to get a lot of bang for our, like in our video, we want to get a lot of bang for our caloric buck. So when you put calories into your body in the form of carbs, we want them to be those fiber-rich fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Okay, like the G-bombs that our man Joel talked about in the video. When it comes to drinking certain things, a lot of things contain sugar, so again, that could be a little bit dangerous. You're adding extra calories to your diet when maybe you don't really need those calories, so you just got to be careful with the added sugars by way of beverage. The second macronutrient that we'll touch on here in this presentation will be fats. Okay, so fats are very energy dense. So if we're talking about calories per gram, usually with a carb or a protein, you're getting about 4 calories per gram. With a fat, you are consuming 9 calories per gram of whatever you are putting into your body. So that's why eating, a high-fat diet, something that's high fat, will fill you up more so than eating your protein or your carb. Okay, so fats are very energy dense. Okay. There's saturated fats and there's unsaturated fats. Saturated fats are usually solid at room temperature, so think about some of the things that are solid when it comes to fat at room temperature. A stick of butter, typically solid at room temperature, that's a saturated fat. Animal fats, like if we look at this cut of meat over here, you're going to see some of that saturated solid fat in that animal product. Okay, unsaturated fat, those things are liquid at room temperature, so mostly oils there. We have a breakdown in this chart. It shows you the percentage of fat. It shows you the percentage of fat for each of these monosaturated fats. Okay, so we look at sunflower oil, 10% saturated, 66% polysaturated, and 28% mono. Other common oils here we have olive oil, 14% solid saturated, 8% poly, 78% mono saturated. Oops. Canola 735 and 58. So oftentimes it's not all saturated, or oftentimes it's not all unsaturated. It's a combination. Okay. I can never say this word. Hydrogenation. That is converting oils to solids, and this used to be something that was done more often until we started to understand the dangers of that conversion process. Basically, when we convert oils into solids, it breaks down the cell walls. It produces what we often call and refer to as trans fats. These days, we try not to consume anything with trans fats in them. Again, it can destroy the cell walls and increase your LDL cholesterol. And also, when you consume those products that have been converted, it will contribute to plaque in your arteries, okay, vessels. So when I think of this process, I think of like Crisco, and my favorite kind of cookies are the chocolate chip cookies with like the Crisco sticks that you used to make those. But again, not at all good for you. Okay. Um, Other ways we can kind of modify fat, some substitutes here. Um, Things you can do when you choose to eat a product that you know is going to have fat in it, like if it's an animal product, look for leaner cuts of that product. Obviously, fish is pretty lean. Poultry can be leaner. When you add milk or consume milk, make sure that you're consuming non-fat milk if you can, or just those low-fat dairy products. When it comes to preparing your meal, it's obviously better to boil, broil, or bake instead of frying in those oils. And I think that's it there. So we'll go on to our final macronutrient, and that is protein. So large part of our diet should be carbs, part of our diet should be fats, and then protein. Protein is not really a major energy source for us when we consume proteins. They do give us some energy, but the primary role of proteins is build and maintain body tissues. So, sources of protein. We think of protein, we usually think of animal products like meat, oftentimes dairy. Other sources of protein could be vegetable sources such as beans, nuts, legumes, and grains. When we break down proteins, um, eventually we get to building blocks, amino acids, and usually there's long chains of amino acids, and it's very difficult for our bodies to break down proteins. It takes a lot of effort. Um, there's very complex to break down all of those amino acids. Eventually, once we have broken down those proteins enough, we're able to use uh, those amino acids, but it's just a long process, a lot of breaking down. Okay. When it comes to protein guidelines, we need to consume 2 servings of protein every day. We're talking about lean meat, fish, poultry, dairy products, things like that. And excess protein can definitely be harmful for you. So you got to be careful. Damage to your organs, kidneys, in particular, with too much protein. So it's great if you are not getting what you need in terms of your protein. You can supplement, obviously, but we don't want to go overboard because that would be counterproductive. All right. So moving forward in this presentation, we went through all your macros. Eventually here we'll go through some of your micronutrients. We'll probably wait and do that in class. But I want to show you what this should look like. This is a dietary reference intake. It shows you what your diet should consist of. Again, carbs, and this is very general. Carbs should make up about 45 to 65% of your daily intake. Next would be fats at about 20 to 35% of your diet, and try to limit that saturated fat, that solid fat if you can. Proteins should be the smallest piece of the pie here, between 10 to 35% of your daily intake should come from proteins. Again, I kind of touched on this earlier, but I told you that fats were the most energy dense. When you eat a gram of fat, you're consuming 9 calories, protein 4 calories, carbs 4 calories. So again, fats are the most energy dense. Okay, one other little note down here, we have alcohol on here. Alcohol is not a macronutrient or a micronutrient. Alcohol, basically, when you consume alcohol, it's not giving your body energy at all. Um, I mean, just empty calories, 7 calories, with not much to show. Okay, so that's what your DRI, your daily reference intake, should look like, and there's different diets out there. But I mean, most experts feel that this is the proper breakdown, and we will look at how you guys did with your nutrition reports when you get those back after we visit the lab to see how you guys did with this. But this is the way that it should sort of look. Okay. Other things here we'll bring up here. Some recommendations. Make half of your grains whole, as we talked about. The difference between complex and simple carbs. The whiter the bread, the quicker you're dead. We heard Joel refer to that saying in his video there. You want to vary your veggies. Different veggies do different things for us, and we'll talk more about that when it comes to those micronutrients and vitamins. Focus on your fruits. Most Americans don't get the fruits and veggies that they need on a daily basis, less than 20%. Know your fats. There's different forms of fats. Some of them are obviously helpful, and we need to consume a certain amount of fats every day. But know what you're putting in your body in terms of that fat. Stay away from those trans fats if you can. Consume calcium-rich foods. Go lean with protein. And if you have any special needs, we would urge you to supplement if you could. All right. And then we already gave you information on your nutrition analysis. Step number 1 is going to be that food log. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed your short presentation here. Focus was macronutrients, the ones that provide your body with energy. Kind of ran through that pretty quickly here. In the coming days here, you're going to have a presentation on the micronutrients. We'll go through those quickly. And in the meantime, get busy on that food log. Okay? Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next week. Until then.